Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining IBM webinar. Before we start, I'd like to go over some housekeeping items. At the bottom of your screen, you should see a Q&A box where you can start submitting your questions for our presenters today. Later today, you will receive a link to the recording and the link to the slide deck. So without further ado, I will pass it over to John.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So we are, right, and thank you for joining for the webinar too. So we are seeing a significant shift in how organizations are thinking about their data platforms with growing demand for AI-driven analytics, hybrid architecture, and lakehouse integrations. At the same time, many teams are facing a common challenge like how do you modernize your data platform without disrupting what already works? That's exactly what we'll be focusing on in today's session. How Netezza is evolving to support modern analytics and AI workloads while giving you the flexibility to move at your own pace. So we'll walk through the latest innovations, deployment options, and what's coming in the Netezza 2026 roadmap. Before I hand over to Sri, I wanted to introduce our two experts from the Netezza team and our speakers for this session. Sripat Sonavane, who is the Principal Product Manager, and Rajesh Pandey, who is our Chief Architect. They'll be taking you through the product evaluation, architecture, and roadmap in detail. With that, I'll hand it over to Sri to get us started.
Thank you, John. Hey, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're located. My name is Sripat Sonavane. I go by the name Shri. I am on the product management team for IBM Netezza. A lot of you who are attending the call today, I'd like to thank you for taking the time and giving us the time today to go through a very interesting and a topic that's close to our hearts, which is IBM Netezza and how we are investing in the engine to make it ready for the modernized workload set. I'm joined by our chief architect, Rajesh Pandey. And what we intend to do today is to go through information around IBM Netezza, how we are investing in the engine from both a lake housing as well as an AI standpoint to make sure that the modern workloads are catered to. If you're an existing user of Netezza, if you're an user who was using Netezza in the past and want to come back. With that said, let me just quickly start off with just some macro trends. And this is something that's not new. Of course, all of us who work in data and deal with data day in, day out are very well aware that data keeps growing, right? And this has been happening. It's not something that's new. It's been happening over the years and continues to happen in the current state, and also will continue to happen in the future. Data is coming in from all different sources within your environments. And it is not just the volume of data that keeps growing, but it's also the different kinds of data that come in, right? At a very high level, you've got structured data that's sitting within your databases and data stores, but you're also dealing with unstructured data in the form of PDFs, videos, customer sentiments, etc., like the feedback that you get on customer feedback platforms, etc. You name it. There's so many of these sources out there from where data about your products, your businesses is coming in and you want to collect. And at the end of the day, as you're collecting all of that data and storing it and within the database platforms or the data platforms that you're using, you want to continuously look at how do you make sense of that data to basically then get it to a point where you can meaningfully use it to further your businesses and different objectives and goals that you have within your businesses. And as I said, this is something that will continue to happen in the past, but more importantly, the platforms that you're using or the tools that you're using to deal with this data, you also want to make sure that those platforms are kept up to date and are evolving to deal with this trend. Of course, with that much amount of data that's coming in, just if you look at the data platform and the shift that is happening in the data platform itself, of course, AI is not something that's new. All of us have been hearing about the word AI. It's almost everywhere and in all conversations that we have today. But again, it's timely where all of these, everything that's going into development of AI and the infusion of AI in everything that we do is happening so fast and such a rapid pace, that to keep up with it, you need to do more. And of course, from a data standpoint, again, as I said, the data that you're collecting regarding your businesses from customers, whether that's structured, unstructured, with the infusion of AI in all of the platforms and everything that we do, it increasingly gets challenging to deal with that kind of pace and evolution with the tools that you're using. So AI is happening. It's a very real thing. It's happening. It will continue to happen and get infused in our environments. So we need to deal with that. Aside from that, of course, we want to operate in a hybrid environment. You've got on-premises cloud, but you also, from a data collection pattern, again, going back to structured and unstructured, you want to collect all of that data, have it housed somewhere, and then start building your applications on top to get some meaningful insights out of it. And so lake housing is again a trend that we know is evolving as we speak, and it's again at a very rapid pace that keeps happening. And then, of course, costs and complexity. So you have fewer resources, but you need to still do more with the available resources. So it creates constraints from both resourcing as well as the costs that you incur within your businesses. So you want to optimize around all of that. Well, at IBM, of course, dealing with tools that we produce to deal with data, we realize all of these trends and the software and the products that we put out. We ensure that we are, evolving those to meet these trends as they are evolving. And so that's something that also applies to Netezza, of course. And what we've been doing is over the past few years, this year as well as looking into the future, we've continuously been investing in the engine to number one, make sure that it caters to the trends that we are seeing in the market. And number two is also bring flexibility so that you can pick and choose how you want to consume that software, right? So let me just now, with that said, just let's look at a quick recap, if you may, about IBM Netezza. So we may have people on this call who are using Netezza day to day in their environments, have been long-term users of Netezza. There could be people who may be hearing about this for the first time. So I just wanted to take this time to do a quick recap and take us through what Netezza is. In very simplistic terms, of course, it's a database engine that's built and purpose-built to cater to analytics and enterprise analytics, right? Um, it took birth, as most of you on this call may know, as an appliance form factor. So you may have or heard of different names and the evolution of that appliance form factor over the years that Netezza has been operating. I think the latest one that we have in the market, and we'll talk about it shortly in a second, is the Netezza N4001, which we also call as Barracuda. But the previous generation, which maybe is something that most of you may be using, is Netezza Hammerhead. So you see that little picture on the left, sort of shows the appliance, but the birth of IBM Netezza happened in that form factor. But of course, as you look at how just consumption platforms have evolved, which is now you have on premises, you also have on the cloud. You want to have the flexibility that as your workloads are moving to the cloud, and maybe some of them still are on-prem, you want to operate in a hybrid environment and make sure that, from a tooling standpoint, and in this case, Netezza is also built to support running in a hybrid environment. So that's what we've been investing in and making sure that that's possible. But really, from an engine standpoint, regardless of the form factor that you pick, our philosophy around development of Netezza is we want to provide the same capabilities regardless of where it runs, whether that's on-prem or on the cloud. So from that standpoint, it's a like to like around anything that you do with the engine itself. Of course, as we look at that, we also want to make sure that it caters to really high performance analytics. It's easy to use, even if you're moving from one form factor to the other. It's almost frictionless, and you're easily able to do that. So all of those things go into consideration when we look at developing the engine itself. Speaking of which, let me now next talk about the flexibility, the whole topic around flexibility of consumption. And what I really mean is the deployment form factors that we have available today. So let me start off with what we do on the cloud, and then I'll quickly also talk about what we do on premises. Now, when we talk about deploying Netezza on the cloud, the cloud platforms that we support today is AWS and Azure. And then on the future roadmap items, we're also planning to look at GCP or Google Cloud. So that's definitely something that we're working for this year. But for the current cloud platforms that we have available, there's two flavors of the cloud offering that we offer. The first one, what we call as a bring your own cloud. In very simplistic terms, it's a managed service. So in terms of managing Netezza for you, IBM manages that for you. But what's really important is the data sovereignty piece, right? So you have some tighter security controls around your data and your data infrastructure, and you want to maintain that, continue sort of, have some more granular control there. That's where the bring your own cloud offering comes in. Effectively, the data plane, the database instances, and all of that data runs within your virtual private cloud account, whether that's on AWS or on Azure, right? And as an example, I'll just pick on Azure. Once you have a bring your own cloud where Netezza is running within your virtual private cloud account, in terms of providing IBM the authorization to come in and manage that service for you, you can use Azure Lighthouse, and all of that is built into the experience where that's how we sort of have our cloud and SRE teams come in and manage that service for you. And that includes everything in terms of looking at taking over the overheads around running the service, patches, updates, and of course we work with you to do that as you use this service. So that's your bring your own cloud. On the other side, the second flavor that we have for the on cloud offering is the classic fully managed SaaS. In this case, everything runs within IBM's virtual private cloud account on both Azure and AWS. So it's your classic SaaS service. You basically subscribe to the service, management, overheads, etc. Everything has been done by IBM for you. And in this case, it's really for you a completely off-hands experience, right? Like where you just want to come in, get the subscription, and then let IBM manage all the overheads around the service itself. And that's the complete stack, whether that's the service or the underlying infrastructure. That's where the fully managed SaaS offering comes in. Again, available on both AWS and Azure. And later this year, we're also looking to bring in GCP and support GCP. The next one is on-premises. Of course, going back to the theme of flexibility, so you pick and choose what makes sense for you. If you are someone who wants to run the Netezza engine on premises, again, there's a couple of ways you can do that. One is Netezza software only. So this is where you either license or you buy the software as perpetual license. So you outright buy the software, or you can get subscription licenses where you get or you rent the software for a specific term. And then really from anything that's infrastructure and hardware, it's for you to pick, right? So you've got the entitlement to the software from IBM, and then to optimize costs around what hardware it runs, etc. You can go and pick what hardware, what you want, and sort of then put it together. That sits in your data center, install Netezza on top of it, and it's completely self-managed by you. So you get complete control in terms of running both the software and the hardware. So that's the software only. And then I would say the premium, the most premium, I would say, from an on-premises standpoint is the appliance form factor, where the whole experience is plug and play. And as I said, hopefully most of the people on this call are using a Netezza in their environments today, and likely would be an appliance form factor. It's the same value proposition that you have in place. You get the appliance, everything is built in for you, delivered to you. All you need to do is just plug and play. Again, everything runs on-prem within your data center and four walls of your data center. So again, from an on-premises standpoint, these are the options that you have. To recap, all of this is being done to provide you flexibility to pick and choose the form factor that makes more sense for you, right? And as your strategy around where you want to run your software, your applications, etc., evolves, if that's an hybrid environment, we are built to cater to that environment and those requirements. So that's from a where you can run Netezza today from a deployment form factor standpoint. I do want to get into, and this is going to be high level as we get into a bit more detail that British will walk us through. I wanted to quickly touch upon some of the things that we've been working for the past few years and how we're investing in the engine and sort of what's the end benefit for you. Really, the themes that we're talking about is lake housing, right? Because we talked about that trend. That's something that's happening as we speak, and maybe some of you have already started towards that direction. And then you've also got the infusion of AI, right? How we are infusing AI and how we are developing the engine to make sure that as you have AI applications or rack pattern use cases, you want to run it on top of the data that sits within Netezza. That's those are the themes that we're looking at and taking into considerations when we're looking at what we're investing in. Start off as of today in production, both for the cloud offerings that you have on AWS and Azure, whether that's the BYOC or the classic SaaS. Netezza now supports a tiered storage form structure. So we've been by default supporting block storage, but we also now support native cloud object storage. So as an example, on AWS S3 is something that we support. But effectively for you as an end user, what that means is you're able to cost optimize, right? So let's say you have got hot data that requires performance storage. You can of course use block storage that we already have in there, but you also maybe have archival data or cold data, so to speak, that you want to save for whatever reasons, maybe that's regulatory requirements, etc. You can now use object storage to store that data in there. Um, what we've made sure is as we've evolved this engine to support the tiered storage architecture, we've also invested in on the compute side of things to make sure that there's no performance degradation, right? So the compute nodes, as an example, that we're using that already has some cache built in. So let's say there's some workloads that you're frequently running. You can have some of that data stored in the cache that's associated with the compute node. And in that case, it really becomes quick. There's lower latency. You don't need an IO operation all the way to go to the disk and get that data from there. So we've thought that experience through and made sure that there's no performance impact as we are evolving the engine and doing some of these things. So that's on the native cloud object storage. The next thing from a lakehousing standpoint, really to enable that use case, we now also support the Iceberg REST catalog. So in addition to the native data format for Netezza, we now also support Iceberg tables. So what that really means is, again, like as you are evolving into a lake housing architecture and you have Netezza in there, you preserve that investment that you've done in Netezza and you're now able to extend into the lake housing use case. Um, Something that I'll talk on the next slide is as well that we've got some items that we're working on from a roadmap standpoint to also extend that capability into external Iceberg catalogs and what we do to support those external catalogs. But I'll just quickly talk about that on the next slide. So we do have now support for Iceberg REST catalog. From an AI standpoint, really, again, like a couple of highlights that I'd like to touch upon is if you've not already heard about it or used it, or if you're on the cloud or going to the cloud or going to Netezza on cloud, whether that's BYOC or SaaS, we have the AI powered database assistant in there. And really, from an end user standpoint, the benefit that you have is you've got, let's say, maybe the junior DBAs who are joining the team who you need to upskill, or even for senior DBAs, if you want to sort of ease in the overhead around running Netezza. Let's say you're running into a sort of an error, you want to get quick access to documentation, you want help around troubleshooting. This sort of chatbot experience that's built into the cloud offerings that we have, everything's powered through AI. That's what you are able to do. So you can just basically use that chatbot to maybe look up a specific SQL command that you're using with Netezza, maybe a error you ran into. You want to understand best practices. Look up documentation real quickly. You can just in natural language ask that question to the assistant, and it will give you that answer. So the whole intent is to make it easy from a database management standpoint to make that experience seamless and hopefully less overheads as you use Netezza day in day out. And then the last one I'll quickly touch upon is the smart scaling around compute. Effectively, what that means is there's intelligence built in. If your workloads, if you're not running your workloads as aggressively, and there's intelligence built in to pause the compute for the time period we are not using your workload. So that helps you sort of cost optimize around your compute costs as you go about using Netezza. Now, what we've done is, if you see the hot links on the left side, I've included those in there. Of course, we'll be sharing this content with you after the webinar today. But feel free to read through the details where we've written articles and blog posts around what these items are. And of course, if you have any questions, we've got the Netezza community, so you can reach out to us or on the community, and happy to answer those questions over there. So that's what we have today. Of course, as we look into 2026 and some of the roadmap items that we're building, again from a leak housing and an AI standpoint. Quickly touching upon the Iceberg catalog. So we are, working towards supporting external Iceberg catalogs as well, where you can then, things like, Microsoft Purview or AWS Glue, some of these catalogs. But also the intent is so that you can then use also engines like Databricks and Snowflake. So your data still sits within Netezza. You still continue preserving your investment in Netezza, but you can have, if you are now also bringing in Databricks and Snowflake, you can use those engines to query that data that sits in Netezza, right? So it's sort of building that whole ecosystem so that you don't have to throw away everything that you invested in Netezza, right, and then start off from scratch. The intent there is to help you preserve that investment and extend that into that whole ecosystem. We also then have plans later this year to introduce support for the Unity catalog. Again, this goes around Databricks. If you're someone who is standardizing on Databricks, but again, want to preserve your Netezza investment, and you should absolutely do that. That's where you're able to sort of build that ecosystem around Netezza and bring in Databricks and continue to use Databricks around the data that's sitting in Netezza and expand from there. Around unstructured data, this really comes down to you building AI applications or enabling RAG pattern use cases. And if you want to do that on the data that sits within Netezza, what we are working towards this year is support for the vector data type. So like you create the vector embeddings, and those embeddings of unstructured data sit and are stored within Netezza alongside your structured data. But then also going one step beyond, also bring in support for unstructured data like images, PDFs, videos, what have you. And all of that is to have both structured and unstructured sit together within Netezza, but also then once that data is in there, it's set up in a way where then you're able to then connect into the whole RAG pattern use case, so that you can then build those applications on that data that sits within your Netezza environments. And then last one, really, before I hand it to Brajesh, is Inza, which is the in database analytics and the functions. So we are enriching those to also now bring in AI and do extend those to with AI functions. But effectively, it gives you richer insights. If you think of it that way, you've got now machine learning that's built in right in there to help you do basically what you've been doing using existing data, SQL, all those workloads. We still maintain those, and you continue doing those the same way that you've been used to. But also now you've got machine learning layered in all into it, so that now you're unlocking richer insights as you're running analytics on the data that you're collecting. So that's what something that we're focused on for the rest of 2026. Again, Google Cloud, something that I've not mentioned here, but again, for Google Cloud, we are also trying to bring in, if you talked about the Netezza on Cloud, that picture that we talked about, we're also planning to bring in GCP in that mix. And so whatever we are doing from an engine standpoint, we'll also be looking at making all of those things available on Google Cloud, again, later this year as we are working towards it. One last thing is, now why all of this is right now, right? Why is this? Why are we having this webinar? Why is it timely right now? Is if you are someone who's using Hammerhead, the end of support, that deadline is quickly approaching. It's in 2028, but all of us who work in data day in day out, we understand like these conversations take time, but we wanted. And for that reason, we want to start these conversations as early as possible. So you now know the deployment options that we have available in terms of, again, going back to the flexibility theme where you get to choose and pick which form factor makes sense. And now you know where we are available. But as you look at doing that and you start modernizing, again, this is the way we've built this whole experience for you to move from one form factor to the other. It's not a migration, it's an upgrade. right? So it's a like to like, of course, goes back to what I said earlier, which is it's the same engine running, whether that's on premises or on the cloud. All those capabilities that I talked about that we have available and we will make available will come to that engine again, runs the same regardless of where you run it. The whole intent is we've designed the whole upgrade process to be a zero trauma upgrade, right? And of course, if you need some help there, we've got help available from an IBM standpoint, also a partner standpoint. But the whole intent is for you to easily go from one form factor to the other with the functions like backup, restore, etc., that we have available. And from an application standpoint, again, this whole experience is designed to make sure there's no changes to the applications, right? It's basically you then repointing that application to the form factor that you've modernized to. So again, that's what I wanted to sort of conclude at least my section on as we now get into next, which is where Prajesh will walk us through a bit more detail on some of these things that I touched upon at a higher level. So with that, Brajesh, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Sri. Hi, everyone. My name is Brajesh Pandey. So I've been with Netezza for almost 21 years. So I have seen everything in Netezza. So one thing, if you look at like, just wanted to, before I start with that, one thing I just want to highlight. Um, if you look at like what Sri went over, right? So if you look at like past few years starting, we are really investing into Netezza engine, Netezza database, right? And it started off with making Netezza cloud native in the cloud. So now we are going to be available in every cloud in those two different form factor. Along with, if you look at like the engine, the big thing that we are doing is like we have first made it cloud native. Second thing is we enable JSON support, time travel. Then now the biggest one is now we support object storage, right? And then also another biggest one is now we support Iceberg, AI, and all this stuff. So if you look at here over the course of like now 6-7 years, we are really, really investing into Netezza, and then now we are really investing into databases. And if you look at like the velocity through which we deliver our features, now it's like to another level, right? Every year, like we are bringing something new. And this session is mainly focused on our Lakehouse and AI story and journey. So we'll be oriented here about those two topics, but there are many other things we are also doing, such as TrueDR, like for 99.9% availability and all this stuff. So we'll share with this like the complete roadmap. Okay, so coming to this, right? If you look at here, like one of the things that we always wanted to do was, because as a Netezza customer, one of the thing is we always want to expand our storage, right? And traditionally what we did, like whenever we expanded our storage, we had to increase compute. But in cloud, there's a different model that we are doing. And then whatever we are doing will be available across all deployment form factor that Sri already mentioned. So the object storage, the one of the main thing that we wanted to do was how can we reduce customer storage cost, but provide like the performance parity, on-prem performance parity that our customer get the block storage, right? So if you look at in this example, it's we wanted to maintain the same SQL compatibility whatever you run today. So there's no change whenever we are bringing this object storage. There's no change in any SQL, right? Your existing application SQL will just work, right? And we really have like made our in cloud the cost model transparent, because now like you can see like how you're using storage and how many APIs you're calling and all this stuff, right? One of the important thing I'll talk about, right, is even though like the use case is like hot data and cold data, that's how you start with, but our goal is to give you the performance with object storage as well, so you don't see any differences, right? And we were able to achieve that, right? So for just wanted to give some internal numbers here. Our in-house testing, what we demonstrated was object storage really performs better for some of the workloads, such as you have batch writes and you have mixed workload, because of this nature of like you can run multiple thread accessing the same common shared storage. So I'm very excited, fascinated about this architecture. And if you look at like the way it will work is, and depending on which form factor you're using, deployment form factor, if you're using fully managed, it will be deployed for you. The bucket, it will bring the bucket along with the deployment. BYOC, because anyways, like you're deploying in your data center, in your account, it will be created there. On-prem, you bring object storage box, right? it could be IBM Ceph storage box, it could be MinIO box, or if you just want to connect to cloud, right? You can do that, but then you'll be subjected to egress cost and all this stuff. So the main thing is like, the way we have created this like because if you look at here, like, this provider you flexibility, whether you can use block storage and object storage, like going back to tiered storage architecture. So in our SQL, we have provided some options, right? So there are some, like, three ways you can create these tables. You can just say like, hey, now going forward, any table that I create in the system should be object storage. So you have to set a global flag in Postgres that you might already know. You can say like, okay, no, I want to set a session level where if within the session I want to create any table, it should be object storage. Or you can also, like, use storage type option in the SQL, create table from, let's say you are doing create table T1, blah, 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 storage type object storage. So we have provided all the knobs where you can manage your tables, whether you want to in block or you want to storage, you can pretty much do that. And like I said, we this solution is gonna be is becoming very popular because most of our existing customer, particularly who are on the cloud, they already started using the hybrid um, tiered structure where they have their hard data on block and then cold data on object store. So they're already using it. Can you go to next slide, please? Okay. So if you look at, like, what is our vision about Netezza, particularly to play in this lakehouse ecosystem? If you look at here, like, we know that it's going to be a transition phase for our customer. So we don't want to just do like just like one way or other way, right? We are providing customers option, and that's why you're saying now Netezza supports block storage, object storage, and open table format, right? For example, if you're creating a data lake, you can just like have open table iceberg format, and then other engine can access the data. Or the other way is like you can do ETL in your lake by bringing some other engine, cheaper engine, and then gold data can be on Netezza side, right? So you can solve your use cases. And if you look at here, like, one of thing is there are some recommendation that we have. For example, if you have small writes, right? Like, let's say you are doing insert into the single record, then we prefer it like use block storage because you're there, the latency would be less compared to others. Let's say if you want to do read heavy operation, right? The reason is like, object storage is like because there are APIs cost as well, right? So normally, like if you're doing read operation where you have populated data in your cache, you just like using it. Object storage over time is more suitable options, right? When I say over time, meaning compare block storage and object storage for the length of 6 months or 3 months, and then you start seeing significant impact in the cost and pricing. Uh, See, the other thing is like we started off with Iceberg Data Lake, but we are extending it to the Delta Lake as well soon. Like as we talked about, it's already a part of our roadmap. So this is our vision. This is where we want to make sure our customers are successful by providing this technology so that they can use this and solve their use cases one after another, right? Go to the next slide, please. All right. So if you look at here, the lake house, right? So how we are trying to approach that. So in the beginning of this year or towards the end of last year, we introduced Iceberg REST catalog in the engine, right? So basically, when you deploy Netezza, what happens is you look at here, you'll get by default Iceberg REST catalog deployed, right? Now, what you can do is you don't need to bring any other external engine, right, to create any data lake table. You can just like run a query. It will use the default Iceberg catalog, and then it will create Iceberg on data table on one of the object storage that you're configured with, right? And if you look at here, like we write data, we write file format in Parquet. Now, the thing is, what happens is you are now cataloging your table definition into the embedded REST catalog, right? So the one part is what we already have it. But in the lake house, it should be bi-directional, right? Where I should be able to access anyone else data, meaning any other data lake, or any other engine should be able to access our. So what we have done is, um, if you look at one of the thing that where we are very good, because in this whole architecture we also want to make sure that as much as possible we do not uh, force customer to change their application, right? So let's say if customers are running select query or create or detailed YAML, we have tried to we have taken all the measure, right? And it's very difficult because Netezza native format and Iceberg format is totally two different format, right? So we are trying to be as close to 100% compatibility, but there are some nuances like where we cannot. Like for example, Netezza supports um, some of the hidden column, like row ID and all, right? And the way it creates sequence, right? Those things you will not be able to create on Iceberg because it's a Netezza specific construct, right? So apart from that, our goal is to give you 99% compatibility so that whatever application you have, it will continue working. The way it happens, so let's talk about, before I go on to the external catalog and external engine, let's talk about the flow that how we have created this. So the first flow is like where there is like one click button for configuration. You just configure the block storage, object storage for Iceberg table. Then what happens is when I'm running query such as like select star from table underscore Iceberg, so you can use your favorite client tool, right? Whatever, like ngSQL, ngload, ngpy, or whatever you can say. You send the query to Netezza host, and what happens is Netezza host knows that this this is an Iceberg table. It goes and talks to this REST catalog that we have embedded, and then try to discover the schema for the table, and get the task list, right? So basically, that means like it could be a bunch of data files that represents the table, or it could be like some task list where, okay, for this file just read the first row group, for the next file read the second row. It's an array, right? So basically, like we are discovering the schema and then getting the task list, and then Netezza host then it distribute, because Netezza is an MPP architecture. We really want to use MPP architecture for Iceberg table as well. Netezza host then what it does is it distribute the task, right, that we got the information from this metadata to all the spoos that we have in the system. Now all of this spoo runs things in parallel, like it runs for native format, right, so that we can get the performance. So that's what we do. And then once you, let's say, like very layman term, like let's say you, from the REST catalog, let's say it said, okay, this table has like 10 data files, Parquet files. Then 10 Parquet files will be distributed across all these spoos. And maybe like the first spoo will get one data file. So first spoo will read one first data file, second will second, and on the sort. So that's how we get the parallelism and the performance. And then I'm happy to make a point here is that uh, we started this journey very long, but right now we are very close to Netezza native table performance, right? With Iceberg as well. It's not going to be really better than native format. I'll be very honest, but at least like 2x slower kind of. That's what we are looking into that, right? And we are able to kind of achieve that. Now, what happens is the next thing that we are doing, that Q2 deliverables that Sri was talking about, we have this our REST catalog, right? And now we want to expose to any other external catalog. So what we are doing is we are working on federation. We are going to be supporting Glue, Purview, IBM, MDS, HMS, or you can other REST catalog or Unity catalog that's coming in future, right? So what happens is, let's say, as a customer, let's say if you already created a data lake and your data gravity is with some other catalog already, then you can use Netezza to federate to that catalog so that you can still access the data. And then we'll have some mirroring or replication technology where every 30 seconds we'll be replicating data from the external catalog into this embedded REST catalog so that performance is not that bad because we want to cache things, right? And then also another thing we want to do is like, you can also have your external engine. Let's say you want to use Netezza, and then the Netezza embedded catalog, you can bring Spark, because as long as an external engine supports Iceberg standard or Unity catalog standard, they should be able to connect to our REST catalog and then able to read the data. So that is the kind of like our journey. So once we are able to provide this architecture by Q2, there's some part like I discussed is already there, but the enabling our internal REST catalog to external and external engine it's coming by Q2. This is our first story for the lake house, right? Now after this, think about this way. We are looking into like working with other cloud vendors to see like how can we be part of their ecosystem, so that like you can bring your favorite AI tools or whatever to work off of the data, right? So that's overall like Netezza. I know like we mentioned Iceberg REST catalog, but it's Unity catalog is also. Go to the next slide, please. So the next one is we are working on this. We have already delivered this. I don't know how many of you know already. This is like cool concept because one of the challenge that we noticed in the field was as a DBA or a database user, it was really difficult to find the information that you're looking for, right? So, and we wanted to simulate or simplify that experience by some automation. And then we have used this AI chatbot. It's already available on our SaaS and BOSC. Basically, the idea here is it provides two main support. The first one is, think about this way: you have Netezza documentation, right? Flooded across like Knowledge Center, IBM Knowledge Center. That you see some support documentation or some blogs, whatever, right? And it's very difficult to get that information. So, what the first thing we have done is using the chatbot, right? You can ask questions such as like, let's say I'm asking question, hey, in Netezza, how can I create a database? So you ask the question to the chatbot, it will go and look at the knowledge, like because what we have done is we have created chunking and everything from our knowledge center and kept it to non-vector database. Yeah, and then we are using here Watson as Orchestrate as our engine to provide that experience. So that's one aspect, like where you can find the documentation or information pretty easily, right? The second expectation is now you want to do some root cause identification, or at least to know the pattern of your system, workload pattern of system, real time, right? So we call those as skills. So we have created some skills already, and we are every month we are extending that. With using that skills, you can ask questions kind of like, hey, how many databases in my system? How many version tables in my database, right? What is workload pattern, right? Can you show me workload pattern? Can you show me like long running queries in last 2 days? So we have created 20 skills we have already documented on our knowledge center. But this more idea, the idea behind is like first you understand your system real time, and then you can ask question about that. Hey, why my system is slower, right? What's going on, right? So those things is can also go and figure it out and at least give an insight, right? It is a journey. Uh, we need your help to start using it, and you can give us your feedback, right? For example, there's a like and dislike button. Through that, you can provide your feedback. The way it works is, if you look at here on the cloud, like SaaS or BYC, and it's going to be soon available for other form factors. You log into that, you'll get a chatbot, right? There's a chatbot there. What happens is, as a user, you ask questions. So it goes to Watson S Orchestrate is integrated with the chatbot. What it does is like we have already a predefined knowledge database. Like we have chunked all the document and everything. So it goes there, it retrieves the data, and then it passes to the LLM, right? So by default, we are using Granite model. We are passing to that, and then it's generating the answer, right? It's pretty simple rack use case if you think that way. But the reason is what is the value proposition of this? The value proposition of this is over other tools in the market, because here you can use skills. You can know what's happening in real time on your system, right? No one else can provide that information. That's where it is like it's going to be very popular for our Netezza customer and for all form factor. Go to the next slide, please. All right. So I still have some time. Yes. So basically, if you look at like one of the like this is the first in industry, like no one has done this, and it's not like something new, right? We've been we had this like at least been out 2 years. The AI infused smart scaling, right? So what happens is, if you look at like there are some of the pattern, like if what was our thought process when we created the granular scaling based on smart compute scaling is we didn't want to just like auto scale the system, because sometimes what happens is if you keep on auto scaling the system, customer will come and say, hey, why you double the system? Why I'm spending more? So we were very mindful about that, right? It's just that like we can do auto scaling, right? But we decided not to do. So instead of what we did was we created AI in smart scaling. So what happens is we are using some AI functions, right, and some ML functions, where if you look at like Netezza, like, does have like query history, right, and it also collects all the information about the query and the system detail. We are going and monitoring, and then that information, query history information, your system visualization, and all this stuff, and we are applying AI functions. What it happens is it looks at like your system and say, hey, currently you are on, let's say, on this configuration NC015. Based on your workload pattern, I think, let's say today is Sunday, maybe on Wednesday you need to scale up your system or scale down the system. So if you look at this chart, right, the the pink or red, or well, I think it's pink or red. Uh, if you look at this like vertical line, that is your current date, like today, and then it's predicting, like, based on workload, how your system will behave, and when you want to scale up your system. And also it tells you the uh, predictability score, right, meaning I'm 50% confident, because it depends on data, right? If you have more data, your prediction will be more accurate, right? So you have to, like, use the system for 2-3 months before like start, like, showing like 90% accuracy and all, right? What is the, like, this, the reason we created that, this information will provide you granular scaling, right? And you just increase your compute for your demand, not just like just randomly go and double your system, right? So that's why we created this. I highly encourage for you guys like to start using it, and it's pretty cool. That's where we started our journey, AI journey, 2 years ago with this. And then customer really likes it. I already got some feedback from customer that, okay, it's really providing some insight to their workload. All right. So the next thing is, this is something cool. It's going to be available by Q2. And because it's going in engine, it's everywhere. So vector data type support. So what we are doing is, like, Netezza will support vector data type, where, let's say, the use case could be if you have like PDF file or text file. Normally our focus is how can you use structured data with some unstructured data and join them together, right? That's the main use case for data warehouse that I could think of. However, you can also do just entire RAG with that. That's totally available. Basically, like, let's say you have PDM text, you parse it, you create embedding. So like, create a table, you create an embedding, and then insert into the embedding. And then using some distance function that we created a L1, L2 operator and then a cosine operator. You can use that, and then you can figure out the distance, right, when you're searching for some information. One of the use case, let's say in a healthcare, right, you go to doctor, right, they kind of like they have some structured data in their database, and then they have some like clinical notes, right, the normally like lab results and something. So what you can, there's a use case is, like, you can still keep your structured data. You can bring those PDF, and then those form data in the PDF can be represented as a vector embedding in Netezza, and then use Netezza to perform some of the similarity search, right? So what is the whole idea here? You don't need to bring any other tool, right, for solving that use case. You can solve that use case like with Netezza. Our goal is, like, see, Netezza is known for performance and simplicity. We are going to be giving you the performance with this support. So that's kind of given. And we are trying to create, like, provide simplicity. We'll talk about the next slide. But that is the really powerful feature that we have created in database. Soon I'll be releasing more blogs about vector data type. But like, if you look at here, this is pretty much it, right? You create the embedding, use distance function for similarity search, and you can, if you want to extend like our operator with any other operator, please do let us know. We have 4 operators that we support today. Go to next slide, please. All right. So if you look at here, the one of the thing also we are doing is unstructured data. So think about this way, right? If you paint a picture in your head, think about our lakehouse story, and then how we are evolving AI story around that, right? It's a lakehouse and AI. So one of the important thing is unstructured data support, right? So what we wanted to do was we want to create 2 pipeline in Netezza. So the first pipeline is, think about, you got just some PDFs, right, or some text file, image or JSON file. Let's say I want to just ingest into Netezza, right? Or for the matter, because if you think about our lakehouse, you can also create, okay, not Netezza, lakehouse, right? You can do that. So think about this is a medallion architecture that we are creating in Netezza. So medallion architecture is your raw data primarily be the lake, cheaper storage. Then your silver gold can be on the fastest engine. So the first pipeline that we are creating, where you said, okay, here is my directory where I have bunch of PDFs. Let's say it's a form PDF to begin with. Then you create the workflow. And when I say pipeline, that means workflow, right? On the UI, you say, okay, let's. This is my source. This is how I want to parse my data, and this is how I want to store the data, right? So what I can do is you can convert PDF files and everything into structured data just by one click, and then you can create schedule also, right? Hey, every 24 hours, go and look at this directory, and if there's any new changes you see, you can go and process that. So that's the first pipeline. Along with that, we are mindful about two things. The first thing we are mindful about the ACLs, right? See, Netezza is database, very known database. So we are mindful about ACLs, meaning if as a user, Brajesh, I ingested some data, Shri, as another user, cannot see Brajesh data unless I grant permission to Shri, right? So we have made sure that we follow those ACLs like that we have in Netezza. The second thing is, let's say if you're parsing the PDF and you detected a SSN, right? The sensitive data. So we're gonna mask that, right? And then that information you can see it only if you're added to the group that we create for the encryption key. Like there's a Netezza supports like column level masking, right? So we're gonna be using that. So that's one pipeline. The second pipeline is a RAG use case, right? Where you can the same pipeline, like we can ingest the data, you can point to directory or locally upload files, and then you can say, hey, I want to parse the data, I want to validate the file, I want to create my embedding, and this is my rule. And then what you can do is you can bring your LLM, right? If you want to bring any other LLM, you can bring it, or if you want to use local LLM, you can do it. So if you look at here, like it's like a SQL based. So in anything that we are doing is you can also do through SQL, right? That's the beauty of a database engine, right? So you can use SQL. We are also going to be exposing REST endpoint that you can use. Important point is we are going to be using MPP architecture of Netezza to get the performance. And that's where here you don't need to bring any other engine for vector data type support database. Netezza can support that. So you are creating one data platform where you can do most of your tasks. With that, anything else, Ray?
No, I think I'll take it over from here. And Rajesh, thank you so much for walking us through all of that information. It's really useful, and hopefully everyone who's on the call attending today and listening into this is hopeful for you and gets excited in terms of the direction that Netezza is headed towards. I'd like to. I just have just the last couple of slides that I just wanted to go through. Of course, as you hear from the product and the development team about everything that we are doing and investing in, we also have customers out there, and including a lot of you who are on the call today. I do want to take the opportunity to thank you for trusting us with your businesses and using the platform. Of course, any feedback is always welcome. It helps us to develop the engine in the direction where our customers want it to go. But yeah, I've got some examples in here, and as I said earlier, we'll be sharing these slides with you and the content with you for you to read offline. But these just are some of the customers that we've worked with and continue to working with. And of course, this is a subset. We've got many customers across the globe, across industries that are using Netezza day to day in their environments. But talks about the different use cases where we are seeing, Netezza being deployed, different form factors, whether that's on-prem, on the cloud, what have you, and how these customers are benefiting from it. Again, I've linked in the hot links in here for you to read through the specific use case for each customer. But the net of it is that they continue to use Netezza, trust Netezza, and then, as I said, right, as we are evolving Netezza towards where we are going and to handle the modern workload set. For all of these customers, including others that are not in here, it's beneficial because now they keep to preserve that investment and extend it in the direction where their strategy is evolving, whether that's on cloud, hybrid, lake housing, AI, what have you. Netezza is available there for you to use. The last thing I just wanted to close out with is, as you now listen through all the information, and hopefully that content has been helpful in understanding where Netezza is going. Again, we continue to invest into this year and going into next. Just look at your environment. If you are someone who's running an appliance like Hammerhead, just to recap on it, the deadline or the end of support is approaching fast. And if you wanted to set up a conversation with us, evaluate what are your options in terms of modernizing from that appliance form factor, or even if you're someone who are new to Netezza and wanted to start off with Netezza fresh and understand which one would work the best depending on what your workloads are, we are here to help. Please reach out. One thing I'll do is, and I'm missing that information in here, is I'll just hot link in here the how you can reach out to us. If you're already talking to your IBM account team, of course, ask them, bring us in, have a conversation. Happy to do a workshop, but we'll help you through understanding if you are an existing customer who's on-prem on an appliance and want to modernize to some of these form factors, what needs to happen and how you can go there. And again, if you're a new customer wants to start off with Netezza and get up to speed, again, happy to help you there. To close out, I do want to again take this opportunity to thank you for your time and attending this session today. Hopefully, this information was useful. If there's anything that we've not addressed and you wanted to have a conversation directly with us, again, please feel free to reach out through your IBM account teams or through just the Netezza website. There's an ask. There's a section where you can get that conversation started, and yeah, we can have that conversation and help you out for the Netezza workloads that you are running. Again, thank you so much, and we'll end here. We'll share these slides with you, and the recording will also be available. Again, thank you again.